Much of this is explained in the Bible. So you can read all about it if you're willing to do a little homework. Satan would like to convince everybody that God doesn't exist, and he's making a lot of progress on it. Like a pyramid scheme, there are a lot of layers. But Satan is the chief conductor and antagonist at the top of the dog pile, and he uses as his pawns people who are very lacking in critical thinking skills or understanding, and who have little or no moral foundation. How did that happen? Removing prayer from schools in 1962, church membership dwindling, technical decisions of the courts on separation of church and state, the rise of easily accessed porn from the internet, no-fault divorce, rampant abortion couched as a woman's right, and sacrificing babies on the altar of profit, denigrating patriotism, e.g., kneeling for the national anthem, and Joe Biden Barack Obama saying there is nothing special about being an American or that there is anything exceptional about America. And the beat goes on. All this was a nefarious start. Of course, what's being touted by the leftist movers and shakers is that diversity, equity, and inclusiveness based on certain identities are wise, wonderful, timely, and harmonious. And people's feelings are far more important than science, the rule of law, facts, national defense, and common sense. Here's an observation. When you hire somebody that is unqualified, but hire them because it makes your organization more diverse or inclusive, you risk and/or sacrifice efficiency. Biden's current presidential administration is a glaring example. It is anything but efficient at everything but lying, exaggerating, deflecting, and poor performance. But Harris got the job as VP because she was blackish, female, and look at the job our border czar has done. Sorry, folks, nothing to see here. Move on. Buttigieg got his job because his faux marriage sucks, pun intended. And look at the mess he made with the container ships, train derailments, and the supply chain crisis. Karen Jean-Pierre got her job because she is black and a lesbian. Look at the job she does in the briefing room where she has to refuse to answer questions for which she has no answer, or has to read from a prepared script. We need to stop this crap and stop calling men she or her. We need to stop a practice that keeps normal people from giving mental people the recognition they desperately want. In other words, we the people demand efficiency, not DEI. To put a finer point on it, equity is the difference between what you owe on something versus its value and is, thus, not the same as equality. We have always been a diverse nation, or we wouldn't call ourselves a melting pot. And inclusiveness has no satisfactory or detailed definition as to what the aim is. But take the acronym and rearrange the order and it spells die. But let's not gloss over what anybody with an IQ that doesn't look like a shoe size knows to be nothing more than a manipulation of words that fit into a nice tidy little package we call deceit. Satan's strong suit. If you put glitter on the contents of a cat box, would it work as aromatherapy because CNN's group thinks that it was a good idea? Well, that's essentially what the media manages to do. Cover up the ugly stuff with a little glitz and glitter, and the uninformed sheeple follow along, like those who are told to shout into the air to solve their angst. A little lie here and a little cover up there is all meant to misinform, disinform, confuse us, derail, and shut down dissent. If you don't believe it, take the word of one of CNN's own staffers who told Project Veritas they deliberately manipulate the news to manipulate people because they want to change the world, which meant change it to fit the left's agenda, and that included getting Trump out of office. So, the leftist media doesn't intend to tell you what's happening. They only tell you what to think. And if they continue to broadcast the same lies over and over 24/7, and it begins to make sense to you, then you are watching the wrong channel. According to a defector from North Korea, the people are issued radios by the government, which they must leave turned on 24 hours a day, and by which communist propaganda is spewed constantly. If they turn it off, Neighbors can and will tattle on them to the government. They use the tactics mentioned herein to get their way because there are a lot more of us than of those who are trying to impose their evil agenda on us. And the last thing that they'd want is for us to understand more clearly what they're doing and rise up an armed citizens' revolution against the Marxists, i.e., civil war. Let's revisit the question about how many shootings we hear reported in the propagandist media. Is it that we've always had people shooting people, and the media has just decided to focus more on it and report it to death? Or is it being created and encouraged by leftists because they need to abolish the Second Amendment, and constant reporting of this nature will convince people to consent to gun grabs so we can't fight back when things escalate? Much to their chagrin, we are not only armed, but riots and calls for defunding the police drove record numbers of gun purchases in 2020, and 5.5 million guns were sold in the first quarter of 2021. Here's an interesting little factoid. 2. Almost immediately after the Soviets took over in Russia, Lenin called for abolishing the police, as did black activist, member of the Communist Party, and member of the Black Panthers, Angela Davis, who in 1970 was charged with aggravated kidnapping and first-degree murder. But she became a professor at UCLA. That doesn't say much for UCLA any more than it's a feather in the cap of the University of Chicago for hiring convicted terrorist, anarchist, and member of the 1960s era, the Weather Underground, Bill Ayers, who unsurprisingly promoted communism and allegedly ghostwrote Obama's book, Dreams from My Father. How much more radical can California or Illinois get than hiring anarchists and murderers to teach our nation's college students?